Okay, so welcome back. This is video two. We hope you had a good break. Now we're going to speak about the feelings worksheet that was included in your boxes, and it's entitled the in-class activity. And we really feel strongly about this worksheet. And it's not only a worksheet that you should do within this first week. We feel like you should refer back to this worksheet whenever feelings are surfacing for you. When you're going through a breakup, you're on this emotional roller coaster ride of feelings. And, sometimes you're, feeling, hopeless and fearful. Another day you could be feeling, relieved and at peace. And then, the next day you could feel sad and depressed. It's really all about, owning and getting in touch with what you're feeling, when you're feeling it, and then why are you feeling it. And the why is really important here. So if you look at this worksheet, there's, four rows of, different feelings. So for instance, in my, first and second and third and fourth week of the breakup, I was feeling, for the most part, sad, depressed, um, unloved, worthless. And those were pretty consistent until I would say, week 4, some of those feelings started to change and become more positive. Whereas, you had different feelings, with your last breakup where you
I'm
were
a
saying it was more
rebounder.
positive.
So I always felt relief, but also the sadness too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, totally normal to kind of feel all of these. And that's why they're on this sheet. Um, but it's really getting at the why. So why was I feeling worthless? Why was I feeling depressed? And obviously it had everything to do with not only missing the person, but missing the companionship. And that's what it was ultimately all about, for me was I found that I could definitely live without him. I just didn't want to live without the companionship. But it wasn't until I really looked back at those feelings that I was able to get in touch with, okay, what does this mean? Why am I feeling this? And then I could like move on and be okay with, with those thoughts and feelings, because you do have to own it and feel it and sit in it, unfortunately.
And that's really the key part about this assignment is owning it and sitting in it. We often try and come up with ways to avoid our feelings. Escape mechanism, whether it's having a drink. For me, my go-to is always a pint of ice cream, like no one touch, and that's my escape, so I don't have to deal with my feelings. Or maybe it's going for a run. It doesn't have to be something that's like self-destructive, like getting wasted or getting fat. It could be like exercise. But anything that you're doing to prevent yourself from having to feel the feelings that you don't want to deal with is not going to be helpful for you in this process. You really are going to have to sit in it and absorb it and become comfortable with, like, okay, here's where I am and this makes perfect sense. Of course I feel lonely and hopeless and worthless and angry and shocked or embarrassed, all of these things. And to sort of just soothe yourself by saying, yes, it's okay to feel this way, it makes sense. We have it on this list because it makes sense. Now, this isn't an exhaustive list. Our list actually started off as like 4 pages, but we didn't want to overwhelm. So um, know that these feelings are okay. This is also a great tool for life. It isn't something that you can just use during the hardship of a breakup. It's helpful for any time in your life, challenging or otherwise.
Yeah. So if you want to make copies of it and, refer back to it during those times where you're just feeling a multitude of, different things, it really does help get you through.
It's a good filtering device. Okay, so speaking of feelings, we wanted to share with you some pretty powerful information about how your thoughts and your moods direct your thoughts and your behaviors. I'm sorry, how your thoughts and your behaviors direct your moods. Because we've been talking about, this is certainly a time where you feel erratic. You've got all these different emotions coming at you every which way. And I know for myself, when I feel like that, I feel out of control. And for me, there's nothing worse in the world than feeling out of control of my thoughts, and therefore I'm out of control with my behaviors. I can just become like crazy girl, and that's not fun for anybody. um, and then my overall mood is effective. And these are all normal things, because if you look at this diagram that we made for you, it's it's the cycle of your thoughts and your behaviors and your moods and how they connect together. And this entire process is always kickstarted by a trigger. So a trigger is any event or situation, something that occurs in your life that becomes a catalyst for a thought or multiple thoughts. And then the thoughts that you have, they affect the way that you act. And then subsequently, those behaviors dictate what your mood is. And you can see this is created as a circle. So, like that mood that you've now established as a result of your thoughts and behavior creates new thoughts. And the cycle goes on and on. So you can see if we start with a positive thought, then we're going to make positive choices in our behavior and we're going to end up with a positive mood. And that's not usually the case when you're going through a challenging time like a breakup. Usually we end up kickstarting the experience because you've had a challenging trigger with a negative thought. But before we get to that, I want to give you a working example that has nothing to do with breakups. Since we're going to be talking so much about breakups, we'll start with something else. And that's the idea of what happens if you lose your job. So losing your job would be the trigger. And the thoughts that might come flooding through your head are, I'm a loser. No one will ever hire me again. I'll have to go live at home with my parents because I'll have no money. And all these, this flood of negativity enacts some behaviors that are unproductive, unhealthy behaviors, such as isolating yourself, locking yourself up at home or in your room, not wanting to see people, hitting the bottle pretty hard, binge drinking, or under eating or overeating. All sorts of behaviors that are not helping you move forward in your process. And then once you've enacted all of those behaviors, you feel like crap. You feel sad, you feel lonely, you feel worthless, tired, and the list goes on and on. And once you're stuck in that mood, you feel worse. So the cycle starts itself again. You begin to have thoughts that are even worse than the first time, which result in worsening behaviors. And it's a really, really vicious cycle. So we encourage you to think about, you can make yourself a chart similar to this. With your breakup as your trigger, what are those thoughts that you would have? And then with those thoughts, you can pay attention to the behaviors that follow and then the mood that is created. Because of course it's normal to have negative thoughts, and we're not trying to take that away from you. We understand that, and that's important too. But it's all about reframing. How else can you think about this? So I remember with my most recent breakup, the thought that just replayed in my head like a broken record was, no one's going to love me again. I'm not lovable. That was it. I'm not lovable. Over and over and over again. If this guy didn't love me enough to stay with me, then I'm not lovable. That's an extremely destructive thought. And it's also extremely inaccurate. And I had to reframe that and tell myself, okay, so this guy didn't love me, but other people have. I've had other loves in my life, be it romantic partners or friends. She loves me, or family, or, pets. All kinds of greatness has come into my life, and I have been loved, and I've been loved because I am lovable. So I had to reframe it, instead of being so extreme and saying I am unlovable, to saying I was not loved by him, but love awaits me somewhere. Something like that. And then with that, instead of isolating myself and digging into my pints of Ben and Jerry's, instead with that reframe, I would want to get out of my house, and I would want to not date right away necessarily, but I would want to just be out in the environment of the people that loved me. So I would start answering the phone when my friends and family would call. Instead of ignoring them and sending them to voicemail, I would start answering them and say, oh, this is somebody who loves me. I was wrong. Somebody does love me. And therefore I would go out and my mood was happier, and it perpetuated a much more promising, constructive growing experience.
I think this process that you laid out is it's so important, because I think so many times with the kind of muddiness of that happens when you go through a breakup, that kind of like mind mud, you don't realize why you get to a certain mood or a certain thought or a certain feeling, and to kind of follow this process through, it makes you feel like you do have some control, that that you aren't an emotional mess, and reframing, like you said. I think it's
Yeah, it's all about reframing and testing the reality of what you said, and asking yourself, is this really true?
right.
Am I really worthless? Worthless? Like, no, you're not. And then you really just kind of slap yourself in the face with a little bit of reality, or ask your friends to, then you'll realize that the thought you're having is not only unproductive, it's just inaccurate.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that is a good tool for you.
Okay, time to get out
your
pink, and blue hearts. Sorry, this is black, but in your boxes you have blue hearts. And we really feel like, when you're going through a breakup, you need to not only highlight, what, you know, what you did not kind of appreciate, or what was not good about your last relationship, but also what was really good, because those are the things that you want to repeat and look for and establish in your next relationship. And you want to applaud yourself that you actually had those good thoughts, feelings, events happening in your relationship. Because I think so many times, we look back at our relationships and we regret being in them because we're like, I shouldn't have put up with this, I shouldn't have done that. Meanwhile, you know, for the most part, there were some good experiences, or you wouldn't have gotten into the relationship and most likely stayed in it.
And on the flip side too, we've worked with some women who also stay stuck in this was all great.
Yes.
He was perfect. I lost the perfect guy. There was nothing wrong with him. And you need to again reality test it. No one's perfect.
Yeah.
And start to unravel what was imperfect about him and the relationship.
Yeah. Because like we say, if it was so perfect, you would still be in the
it.
relationship.
Yeah.
So, really the pink hearts is to remind yourself that, there was part of that relationship to celebrate and to learn from, and to, really, move into your, next relationship, whenever that is.
So you want to jot down,
Yes,
on the pink note, the good things.
Yes.
And it could be small to large things. It could be, he was really affectionate with me. So I always felt, adored. Or it could be small, like he bought me flowers.
Right, exactly. We'd have, date night, twice a week, where I got to pick the date. Like things that really celebrated about your relationship, that you felt was special about it. The black heart, I think, to Tristan's point before, we could always talk ourselves into why this was the perfect being and the perfect relationship, and just kind of really escape the reality of what is, and that's, we're not in it any longer. The black hearts, and I still have my black heart in my wallet, and not that I need it as often, but is to refer back to really what was not good about this relationship, why you're not in this relationship anymore. My black heart, and I had, several, but I chose one in particular that was really the red flag, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I kept it in my wallet, because that our wallets are always with us. You could keep it on your phone as, a note on your phone, or whatever it may be. But I literally, every time I thought about my ex, or every time I thought, maybe just let's give it one more try, or it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, I'd take this out and I'd be like, okay, the reason I'm out of this relationship is because he was moody and took out his moods on me. And that's not acceptable. And every time it was like reassurance, it was validation of like, you know what, you so made the right choice. So they're both really important, the black and pink hearts. Um, you know, the pink hearts keep, boxed away for safekeeping, and pull it every now and again when you're ready to date, or when you're shaming yourself for what went wrong. You did good. The black hearts is really to kind of get you through letting go, moving on, showing yourself that you're better off without this relationship, without this person in your life.
And something we recommend, if you feel stuck on either or both hearts, ask your friends, because you have talked about this person probably to your friends ad nauseum, and they can probably rattle off really quickly for you particularly what you didn't like about him, because you probably complained a ton. So if you feel stuck on either one of those hearts, your friends are always a great resource.
Yeah.
So it's time for your second break, and we will see you in video 3.
Bye.